Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. The IBF has wasted no time in punishing Michael Hunter for pulling out of an IBF final eliminator against Filip Hrgovic, dropping the heavyweight contender 7 spots in its latest rankings, Hunter falling all the way from 4th to 11th. But this must have been coming for a few days, so news of this broke from Kevin Aioli, and see here on screen. So he says sources tell Yahoo Sports that Michael Hunter not going forward with the bout with Filip Hrgovic. Plans are to go in another direction and should be determined soon. So that sort of emerged and started to be reported, but actually Kalle Sauerland from Sauerland Promotions, he had actually been hitting up Michael Hunter on Twitter a day before that. Has the bounty broken? See here on screen, taunting him. Also, someone had posted Hunter wins comfortably when it was referred to the Hrgovic and Hunter fight. And Kalle and Nissa Sauerland on the Sauerland Brothers Twitter account said, really? So why does Michael Hunter not find his pen and sign? Everyone waiting, purse bid done. Does he want the smoke of Filip Hrgovic? The next hours we will know if it's all bounty talk. So I think at that point, they obviously knew something was happening or about to happen and the fight was going to fall through. Taunting Hunter online there. And then after the fact, you've actually got Kalle Sauerland in an interview with IFL TV and also Sky Sports. And see this caption here. Sure, I used the word coward as well. All that talk, bounty this, bounty that at Michael Hunter should join the WWE. And in that IFL TV link that he's retweeted, the headline is, "You're a disrespectful and a fraud." Kalle Sauerland rips into Michael Hunter. So this whole thing, I mean, there's a number of things to sort of unpack. I guess one thing to sort of say, it's disappointing this fight isn't going to go ahead, because I was really looking forward to this one. But part of the reason that I haven't done much of coverage of this really at all is because no one had signed the fight, and I was waiting for that. So there'd been a lot of talk, and Michael Hunter had been engaging in a lot of it. There'd been some back and forth in social media late 2020, even earlier this year, and Michael Hunter was saying, send the contract, you know, hashtag bounty, all that sort of stuff that he's built for his persona, that he's the sort of can man taking on anyone that can get it, all that sort of stuff, you know, a little bit like Dillian Whyte, but his is that he'll take that bounty. And some of his profile and, you know, the way that he's endeared himself to fans has been because he's been willing to take chances, not always taking everything, but he stepped into some fights that at short notice and it sort of paid off, like the Alexander Ustinov one. He had a good performance against Martin Bakole back in 2018, fought Alexander Povetkin, although he did not fight Carlos Takam when that fight was offered to him, and people often forget that, sort of saying Michael Hunter was willing to fight anyone, anytime. But this fight, the talk, the chat, had been brewing for a while, and it's disappointing it's not going to happen, because it was a big step up for Filip Hrgovic. He needed that fight, and obviously the winner was going to basically have a title shot, be the next IBF mandatory. Maybe they wouldn't have got their title shot for some time, bearing in mind that the IBF mandatory, the last one, Kubrat Pulev, that happened at the end of 2020. There seems to be at least an 18-month to 2-year wait between mandatories, with the 3 belts being held by the one fighter at the moment, that being Anthony Joshua. Who knows what could happen in the next year or two? Maybe belts will fragment, but there would have been a guaranteed shot for the winner. And because it went to a purse bid, this is why Michael Hunter has been punished by the IBF in its latest rankings. Charles Martin never went to a purse bid with Filip Hrgovic. He could have had the opportunity to be in a final eliminator. He didn't opt to do so. So he wasn't punished because it didn't get that far down the path. Hunter was talking big and obviously acting small here, pulling out. And I guess the question is, well, what's Michael Hunter going to be doing now? Because if it's not a final eliminator or a very good fight, it's not going to make a lot of sense. But it could be an indication that perhaps he signed on with some sort of promotional entity, something like that. Maybe Top Rank, maybe the PBC, maybe he's inked some sort of deal. He's going to go into some sort of 2-3 fight deal, who knows? Or he's inked another fight that's just more money. At the end of the day, these things largely do come down to money. And the purse bid, it was about $600,000, Hunter to get 60% of that, which was roughly $360,000. And in the scheme of a fight of this magnitude, him and Hrgovic, that really was probably at the lower end of the scale. So perhaps he's just got a much bigger and better offer to fight someone else that presents less risk. And being a prize fighter, and obviously this is his career, and he has to obviously move in a way that, gets him, some prestige, glory, but also the biggest sort of paydays as well, because it's his career too. He needs to think about the sort of life after boxing, getting some money into the bank. This was in the bag to be had for a final eliminator, and he's walked away. And this is why he's been punished. So it'll be interesting to see what happens next with Michael Hunter, because if it's not a decent fight, well, it doesn't, I think for a lot of fans, won't make a lot of sense. But in some ways as well, he has now burned himself off with quite a few heavyweight fans, I would imagine, because the persona that he's just going to fight anyone, anytime, it's taken a hit. And as we know in heavyweight boxing, most of the times when things fall over or fights get made or otherwise, it's because of money. So 100%, I think this is about money. He's got a better offer elsewhere, and he's going to take it. And if it's not as good a fight as this, then he will get a shellacking in the media and from fans, no doubt. But in some ways, he has to hustle to get his money. I can understand it if it's a much bigger payday. And if it's a much better or bigger fight, well, I can understand that to some point, but we don't know all the information about whatever the opportunity is he's going to take. So one of the questions now is, well, what next? And the obvious next cab off the rank is Joseph Parker, because he's at number 5 in the latest IBF rankings. He's fought a couple of times this year, one of the more active heavyweights in 2021. It'd still be a big step up for Filip Hrgovic given the competition that he's faced, but Parker is currently off contract with Matchroom. And I can tell you now, given the way that Parker has been guided, especially by David Higgins, they will not be sort of willing to let this go to some sort of purse bid for it to ultimately be had for like $600,000 with Joseph Parker getting the B-side money 40%. They're not going to be allowing Joseph Parker to get in the ring for a couple of $100,000 for a fight of that magnitude. So that could be one of the things that either scuppers the fight or certainly delays negotiations in terms of could that fight happen. So it's going to be interesting to see if they go after Parker as the next cab off the rank, if the IBF actually order that, or maybe they could end up looking at someone else further down the rankings here and just making a deal and saying to the IBF, look, will you make this the final eliminator? That could happen. I think the Parker fight, if it happens, it's a big step up for Hrgovic, but is Parker actually going to be willing to take it straight off the bat after a couple of, tough and rugged fights so far this year? And you have to remember, after that win over Derek Chisora, he said he was going to rematch Derek Chisora next, so who knows if that happens or not. But the other thing was, to the New Zealand media, Parker sort of said he really needed 2 or 3 more fights before he could really fight for another heavyweight title, because he needed to work through some things with his new trainer, Andy Lee. He wanted to be in the best position to fight for a heavyweight title and have all sort of the issues that he wants to work on squared away. This is an opportunity that's right here, potentially. Will they latch onto it, or will they give it a miss? Because he's still rated highly, in other sanctioning bodies, a la the WBO. So you don't necessarily have to take the shot, especially if it will ultimately be at short money. And it could be. And this is the thing. Clearly, Sauerland and Matchroom, who were bidding for it previously, didn't want to put a lot into this pot. It was going to be a very, very, very good fight, but it was ultimately going to be done quite cheaply. $600,000 for 2 sort of, top 10, top 15 heavyweight contenders, and, Michael Hunter and Filip Hrgovic, that sort of thing. That was quite a cheap fight, cheap main event in the context of this day and age of the heavyweight division. Better believe that Parker's management will not allow him to step into a fight that is not going to be good money. It would be more based on they'd make it a pay-per-view, something like that, and he'd be getting 7 figures. That's just the way that Joseph Parker and his management roll. So they won't be done cheap, especially if the IBF is going to order them to be the B-side, because he's below Filip Hrgovic in the rankings. So, who else is down there that they could potentially make a fight with? I mean, potentially they could, Zhang Jili, Huey Fury, that's an in-house Matchroom option. Filip Hrgovic been co-promoted by Matchroom. But apart from that, all the other guys are either PBC, Top Rank, or independent like Dempsey McKean, who's fighting out of Australia. Also, Joe Joyce, who's with Frank Warren. And I guess with Zhang Jili and Huey Fury down the bottom of the rankings, the IBF might go, no, it's too low. We're not going to sanction that for an IBF final eliminator. Maybe an eliminator, but maybe not a final eliminator. I mean, someone may be willing to take a shot, an Ortiz potentially, or they might be able to go, well, Ajit Kabayal, you can have a crack. I don't know. We have to sort of see what's going to happen here. But it's probably not going to be just as sort of cut and dried as people sort of think that, hey, it'll be Joseph Parker next. Because there would be all sorts of wrangling behind the scenes. And I'm sure that David Higgins would be trying to leverage that into a new deal and a better sort of, or at least a decent chunk of money guaranteed in a contract with Matchroom if he was to re-up Parker with them. So there is the boxing politics sort of at play there. But also with Parker's statement, does he want to take this sort of fight right now when he says he basically has to iron out some kinks? But sometimes the opportunity, when it's right there, you got to grab it. And Filip Hrgovic is a bit green, compared to Joseph Parker in terms of fighting at that level, at the world level. But Hrgovic is the taller man. He's got the length. He would probably be able to outbox Joseph Parker from the outside. Hrgovic wouldn't be looking to make this some sort of inside brawl. And Joseph Parker's not really an inside fighter. As we saw against Derek Chisora, he doesn't offer much on the inside. He's more a sort of box and move. But Hrgovic can do that too. He can actually box quite, sort of silky from the outside, looking a little Vitali-esque. So I think that would be an interesting fight. But the movement of Parker would be giving Hrgovic some issues. But it's another very good fight. I think a lot of people would sort of say this is another very evenly matched contest. But would it get made? That's the question now. But certainly Kalle Sauerland going in on Michael Hunter. Hunter's rep probably takes a bit of a hit here, but, he's got to go where the money is. He's got to suit himself and his career. And if fans don't like it, well, I'm sure he doesn't really care. Drop a comment loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.